All right, let's talk about one of the most challenging parts of any project, dealing with change. Today, we're going to dive deep into how you can transform that project chaos into a real strategic advantage. We'll be breaking down the Perform Integrated Change Control process straight out of the PMBOK guide.
You know the feeling, right? It starts with one tiny suggestion from a stakeholder, then a quick little fix from a developer, and before you know it, your project is way over budget, hopelessly behind schedule, and looks nothing like the original plan. That, my friends, is scope creep, and it is an absolute project killer. But what if you could actually harness that energy for change instead of just getting run over by it? Okay, first things first, let's get our terms straight. A change request, according to the PMBOK guide, isn't just a casual conversation in the hallway. It's a formal proposal. That word, formal, is the key. It's your first step from chaos toward control, and it applies to literally anything that's been officially agreed upon, your documents, your deliverables, and especially those critical baselines.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off by accepting a universal truth. Change is going to happen. Then we'll look at the system you need to manage it. We'll talk about the information or the fuel you need to make smart calls, the tools for making the decision, and what happens after the decision is made. And we'll wrap up with how mastering all this turns you from just a manager into a real strategic leader.
Now let's be perfectly clear about something. The goal here is not to stop change. That's impossible. On any project that's even slightly complex, change is an absolute guarantee. You'll get new information, the market will shift, your stakeholders will have brilliant new ideas. Change itself isn't the bad guy here. The real enemy is something much, much more sinister.
The enemy is uncontrolled change. See, when changes get slipped in without any formal review, you have no idea what they'll do to your schedule, your budget, your resources, or your risks. It's a recipe for disaster. This structured process we're talking about, it's like your project's immune system, built to fight off exactly this kind of threat.
So, how do we build that immune system? How do we bring some order to all this potential chaos? Well, the PMBOK guide gives us a really powerful framework. The best way to think about it is as the central nervous system for your entire project, making sure every single decision is connected, thoughtful, and clearly communicated.
And here's the official definition. Let's break it down because every single word here matters. It is a process. It starts with reviewing all requests, not just the big ones. Then it's about approving and managing the changes, and not just to the final product, but to all the plans and documents. And maybe most importantly, it wraps up with communicating those decisions to everybody who needs to know.
And this quote just nails it. The key word here is integrated. A change to the scope might seem small on its own, but what does it do to your schedule? What about your budget? Do you now need different resources? This process forces you, and everyone else, to look at the whole picture. It stops a tiny adjustment from secretly becoming a huge risk down the road.
Okay, to make a smart decision, you need the right information. This isn't about guesswork or going with your gut. Integrated change control is a data-driven system. So let's take a look at the fuel you need to get this engine running smoothly.
We can really boil all the different inputs down into three simple logical buckets. First, you've got your guiding plans and baselines. That's basically the map of where you planned to go. Second, you've got your real-time performance data. Think of this as the GPS signal telling you where you actually are right now. And third, of course, are the change requests themselves, the proposed new destinations you need to evaluate.
Now here's where it gets really powerful. Look at how these all work together. Your change management plan, that's your rule book. It tells you how you're going to make decisions. Your baselines, that's your yardstick. It's the official plan you measure everything against. Your work performance reports, that's your reality check, giving you the cold, hard data. And finally, the change request is the spark that puts the whole system into motion.
Okay, so you have all the information you need. Now what? How do you actually process it all and come to a solid decision? Well, this isn't just an informal chat over coffee. It's a structured evaluation, using specific tools and techniques and involving the right people.
You can think of this as a clear four-step workflow. First, you identify that a change is even needed. Then, you formally document it in a change request. Third, you have the critical decision-making step. But it doesn't stop there. The fourth step is to track that change to make sure it gets implemented correctly and everyone knows about it. It's a complete life cycle.
Now, for the really significant changes, especially anything that might impact your baselines, you're going to want a change control board, or a CCB. And this is not just some random meeting. It is a formally chartered group with clearly defined authority. Their whole job is to be the objective judge and jury, making decisions that are in the best interest of the entire project, not just one person's pet feature.
So inside that CCB meeting, how do you actually get to a yes or no? Well, there are a few ways. You could use autocratic decision-making, where one person, usually the project manager or sponsor, makes the final call. It's fast, it's decisive, great for small stuff. Or you can use voting, which is more collaborative and brings the group's collective wisdom into play. The right choice really just depends on your project's culture and how big of an impact the change will have.
So the decision has been made. We're done, right? Nope, not even close. What happens next is just as formal and just as critical as everything that came before. This is where you really lock in control. Think about this for a second. Of all the possible things to come out of this process, only one of them directly says, okay, start working on this change. And that one thing is the approved change request. Everything else, well, it's all about communication and record keeping, which, as we're about to see, is just as important.
And this is a point that so many people miss. Approving the change is just the beginning. The real discipline of integrated change control is in the follow-through, meticulously updating every single affected project document. If you skip this part, your project plan is now a work of fiction, and you're right back to flying blind.
So those updates really fall into two big categories. First, you update the project management plan itself. And here's a super important detail. When a baseline is changed, you don't go back and rewrite history. The new baseline applies from this point forward. This protects the integrity of all your past performance data. Second, you update your project documents, and the most critical one is the change log. This log becomes the official history of every single request that came through, whether it was approved, rejected, or put on hold.
You know, we've been pretty deep in the mechanics of this process, but let's zoom out for a minute. Why does mastering this one thing matter so much? Because it elevates you. It's what transforms you from someone who just tracks tasks on a spreadsheet into someone who strategically steers the entire project.
And look, don't just take my word for it. The PMBOK guide is crystal clear. It says that while a CCB might help make the decisions, owning the integrated change control process itself is the ultimate responsibility of the project manager. This is your turf. Getting this right is what separates the great project leaders from everyone else. It's how you provide stability and confidence to your team and your stakeholders.
So I'll leave you with this question. Take a hard look at your current projects. Are you just constantly reacting, always putting out fires that pop up from uncontrolled changes? Or are you actually in control? Are you using a formal, integrated process to carefully evaluate every change and consciously steer your project toward its destiny? The choice and the power to implement this process is yours to own.